amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. As usual, it's great to be with you. My guest today is Dr. Barry McGovern, Australian Research Associate of the Pacific Whale Foundation Australia, where he manages the research team and leads the field operations to conduct research on the threats whales, dolphins and porpoises face. He completed his PhD research at the University of Queensland, where he studied the acoustic behaviour of bottlenose dolphins. He also has a master's degree from the Sea Mammal Research Unit at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. Barry has a broad range of research experience from a host of different locations around the world. In his home county of Clare in Ireland, he has worked with universities, non-profits and in industry, all focused on the conservation of whales, dolphins and porpoises and other large marine animals. He spent 2 years in Scotland working for a government agency as the Marine Strandings Coordinator and spent a number of years in Namibia in South Africa running field operations for a marine research non-profit on the Skelton Coast. Barry sits on the Hervey Bay Whale Heritage Site Steering Committee and is a member of the European Society for Marine Mammalogy and Orca Research and Rescue. Welcome, Barry.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, Barry, you grew up on the rugged west coast of Ireland, not far, in fact, from where I was born. Tell us about that time.
Yeah, it's a lovely little surfing town. I'm from a place called the Hinch. I think there's about 700 people, although when I lived there was about 500. But it kind of swells during the summer, so it's a very popular tourist destination. It's near the lovely Cliffs of Moher, and it's got beautiful beaches and that. So yeah, it's quite busy in the summer, but in the winter it can be pretty quiet.
It is a lovely part of the world, as you say, a little bit chilly in the winter. Now, Dingle in County Kerry, there was a wonderful dolphin called Fungi who lived there since 1983, entrancing everyone, of course, who visited this lovely harbour. Was it Fungi who started your love with the mammals of the sea? But, sadly, he seems to have disappeared. But did he get you interested in the first place?
It probably wasn't initially the first place, because we would see species off of the Clare coast as well. You know, it's got a few species there. But I do remember seeing Fungi when I was a young fella, and I loved it. All right, and of course he's quite famous in Ireland. And then, you know, not far from where I am, along the coast, we have our own solitary dolphin as well that turned up a number of years ago. So
oh, really?
Dusty is her name. Yeah. But I think it was a mixture of where I was and my family, and you know, they're all big into wildlife, and so I started to get into wildlife. Mostly early on it was things like birds and that, but I don't know where the marine side came. Maybe it's just from growing up, you know, 5 minutes from the beach all my life.
Exactly, it probably well is. But you worked with stranded whales in Scotland. Now, tell us about that time. It did sound a little bit sort of cold and dark, the work you were having to do there, but it would be interesting to know how it all sort of turned out.
I suppose when you hear about it, you're dealing with dead, stranded animals a lot of the time, and so it doesn't sound the greatest. But it's actually a really good way to learn a lot about the species. And so, yes, it is. You are often dealing with dead animals, which is not great, but you can learn a lot. You know, you can look at what sorts of diseases are impacting the animals, natural diseases. And of course, then you can also use it to highlight anthropogenic threats. So, you know, if you can start to see some animals turning up with, you know, maybe rope marks around their tail or something like that, you can start to point towards threats. So while it does sound a little bit morbid, and of course it is, you're dealing with dead animals, you know, it is a really valuable data stream.
Do we know, Barry, why they get stranded? I think I read somewhere that you said it could be, you know, the human sounds in the ocean that disturbs whale sort of sonar systems, you know, large freight ships and all the noises that humans make in the ocean. Do you think that's contributed? Because in Tasmania, where I spent 35 years, there's sadly been some really large whale strandings there.
That's a real nuanced question. And to be honest, and I'll be straight up, the vast majority, significant number of strandings are natural occurrences. Right. Of course, the significant number of strandings we see are single animals, and these could have disease or injury, and some of them die at sea, or some of them will come ashore live stranded and die later. And the vast majority of them are just natural causes. But the big headline grabbing ones are these mass strandings. And so a mass stranding is when we've got two or more animals that strand together, and they typically will strand alive and die there on the shore. And those are the ones, more of them have been linked to anthropogenic activity. So loud noises from things like seismic surveys for oil and gas, or, naval exercises, detonating explosions, things like this. Some have been linked to these mass strandings, and they're sort of ones that are the ones that sort of stand out in the media and things like that.
Well, I think it was fairly recently, wasn't it? The huge one on the west coast of Tasmania.
Yeah, and it just seems to be a hotspot there. And because of the remoteness of where it is, it's very hard to do work on them. First of all, to try and refloat the animals who are alive. And for some species, like things like the pilot whales and these, what we call the blackfish, they're a group of delphinids, which include pilot whales, killer whales, false killer whales. These are sort of on the cusp of being very large animals. And so when they spend a lot of time out on the land, they can start to impact their own internal organs through the weight of their body. And so by the time help gets to them to try and refloat them, they may have some internal injuries already from gravity just pushing down on them for so long. And so quite often when you try to refloat these larger animals, it doesn't end up successful, really.
Look, it's a tragic sight to see, even just watching it on our televisions at home. But, well, as you say, some of it is just natural cause, and others that possibly are caused by human interference. But fortunately, Barry, whale killing has ceased in most places, but I was rather alarmed actually to watch a documentary on the Faroe Islands where it still takes place. Is that the only place in the world now that it takes place?
No, it's not the only place, but it's one of the ones that really gets highlighted. It's called the grind, and it is a traditional form of subsistence hunting, but I think nowadays, because it's so easy to get access to food, we have to kind of question the ethics of it all, because these are pilot whales, usually they target, and it's a pretty harrowing experience for the whales. So they sort of find a pod way offshore in their boats, and they basically chase them towards this beach where they end up stranding. And this can go on for, a couple of hours. And so it's quite stressful and fearful for the animals. And then when they get them on shore, they're such big dolphins that it can be quite hard to kill them humanely and quickly. And I think that's the real issue with this. The actual population is probably not heavily impacted. Maybe the local population, and there may be issues there, but the overall global population of the species wouldn't be. But it's the ethics of not being able to kill an animal humanely that really stands out to at least me in this instance. Like I said, there is ways for us to get our food, and I don't know enough about it, and I don't know how much of the meat is used, and etc. But there are other ways to get more ethically sourced food these days, and I think that's the biggest issue for me with that one.
Yes, it has, again, it's a very awful grisly sight. You've also got a love of birds, Barry. And now, when I was in Tipperary in Ireland last year, visiting my family home on Lough Derg, where I was born, I noticed there were not as many birds there now as I remembered as a child. Why do you think that is? I mean, a local told me it could be eagles or even minks that were responsible. What do you think? But I was amazed that there weren't nearly, I didn't think there were nearly as many.
Well, I'd be fairly confident it's not eagles killing all the birds. We
Right.
have two species of eagles in Ireland that were reintroduced after being extinct, and their numbers are very low. Now, of course, they'll take a few birds, but they're not the ones that are causing the issue. Mink certainly could be an issue. Back in the 70s or 80s, a bunch of, I don't know how you describe them. People who thought they were doing well released a load of mink from fur farms, and they have gone through and decimated a lot of our ground nesting farm birds. But another big issue is the change in farming practices. Unfortunately, the drive to intensify our farming system, which is echoed across the globe, of course, has really pushed the use of fertilizers and monoculture meadows, which are not what a lot of our ground nesting birds are looking for. And that has sort of pushed many of them. And then with the added inclusion of things like minks, but also the lack of top predators mean our middle predators, like our foxes and our crows, their populations have probably increased. And
Right.
all of that impacts heavily on the birds who are already struggling because of the change in farming practices. Now, this is no way me pointing my finger at the farmers. This is me pointing my finger at the system. The system is
Yes.
there, has pushed these poor farmers who are earning absolute pittance
Yeah.
to drive this, producing meat for cheap. And then they're the ones that get the finger pointed at them because of what they've been told by the governments to do. But all this has led to the perfect storm for a lot of our farm birds. And you're dead right. When I was a young lad growing up, I would go out to the fields and you'd see curlews and lapwings and all sorts.
And robin
you just
redbreast.
don't even. Oh yeah, you'll still get them around the houses for
Yeah.
sure. But it's the meadow birds, the birds
Yes.
who nest on the ground in meadows. They're the ones that are really taking a hit. And of course, some of our garden birds are as well. The dunnock,
Yeah.
the hedge sparrow, locally known as the dunnock. They're not doing so well either in certain parts. So
No.
yeah, it's not a great story with our birds in Ireland.
Well, actually, it's interesting because we stayed, when we were in Tipperary last year, we stayed in a most glorious walled garden on Lough Derg. And the gardener who'd been there for 30 or 40 years, she was tearing her hair out because not only for the birds, but also for the garden. So, minks are possibly a problem that might have to be sort of looked at, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they are an invasive species. We don't have them naturally, and
No.
they have exploded. They do trap them. The National Parks and Wildlife do trap them, but with a lot of these invasive species, I mean, Australia knows more than better than anyone really. You can do all the work trying to control them, but sometimes they just breed so quickly that you're always 2 steps behind them. And unfortunately,
Exactly.
for some of the bird species, it might be too little, too late.
A losing battle. Now,
Absolutely.
Barry, after leaving Ireland, you volunteered in Boston. What was that like, and what sort of whales were there?
Yeah, so in our field, you have to try and build up experience. And so what a lot of people do when they're young or fresh out of university or whatever, they'll do internships or volunteer positions. And so I did one over in Boston, actually north of Boston in a place called Gloucester. And it's a great little town. It's one of the last few towns on the East Coast there that's really not reliant on tourism. Fishing is still the main industry there. So it's a little bit rough around the edges, but it's just magic there. But it's a big fishing town for the same reason that the whales are there. There's good prey. And off the coast there in a place called Stillwagon Bank, there's a really productive area, marine park area or marine zone. And that attracts a lot of feeding humpback whales. And that's what I was there for.
Now, I'm a yachty and lived on yachts for, 65 years probably now. And I am a little bit alarmed because we spent a lot of time in the Mediterranean and around. But some yachts now are being attacked by orca whales. Now, are they playing or is it more sinister? I mean, fortunately, the ones we did pass, I don't know if they were orca whales, but whales that we passed us very calmly. But they are causing a bit of a problem, are they not?
Yeah. There's a few stories now of a group of whales attacking sailboats. And I don't know if they have found out exactly why. I mean, there's a few theories. One of the theories I heard was that it was started by a young female. And they believe that maybe she had a bad interaction. Maybe she got clipped by a sailboat, the keel hit her or something. And since then, she started to take her revenge. And it's sort of the behavior has transferred through the population, which is, of course, a culture. This is how culture is formed, behavior that's learned by other species and passed on, or by other individuals of the same species and passed on. But I don't know enough about that. I think that was the last time I heard, but there's several theories. But, some people are saying it's wildlife or Mother Nature finally had enough and taken, using killer whales to be the ones, or orcas to be the ones to lead the charge. I honestly don't know enough about it, but I mean, the disgruntled female who's decided to take her revenge is a story I like. I don't know
Yeah.
how true it is, though.
I think that sounds quite a possibility. But yes, being attacked by a whale, they are very, very large. I can rest assured that it is a scary, well, as I found, going from Menorca across to Sardinia and meeting a couple just before it got dark. It's a frightening feeling, but at least I wasn't being attacked by it. Now, you're listening to
exactly.
Lots to Chat About. I'm Rosemary Peterswald, and my guest today is Dr. Barry McGovern of the Pacific Whale Foundation. Now, Barry, you worked in Namibia. Tell us about that time and working with giraffes.
Yeah, so I went down to Namibia to work with a group called Sea Search Africa and the Namibian Dolphin Project. And they needed someone to run their field operations in Namibia. And I had never been down there. And my dad had spent many years in Africa, and I grew up listening to his stories of Africa. So I said, oh, I can't. I can't wait to have my own stories. So I headed down. But yeah, there I was doing work on marine mammals again, whales and dolphins. But I had a friend who was doing her PhD on giraffes in Namibia.
Right.
And I had brought her and a couple of her friends out on the boat with us, just to show her what we do and things like that. And she was like, oh, you've got to come with me when I do my remote work up in the northwest. I think it's the Kanini region, and it's sort of a real wild corner of Namibia. It's beautiful up there, a lot of dried river beds, but there's wild elephants, desert adapted lions, and obviously lots of giraffes. And so we went up for about 8 or 9 days, and you're off grid there. That you have to bring all your water, all your fuel, all your food, etc. And we went up there to do some photo ID biopsy sampling of giraffes and change a radio collar on one individual. Yeah, so it's pretty amazing.
It would have been an amazing time. But from there you came to Australia. So what brought you to Australia, Barry?
I had finished my time in Namibia and I moved to South Africa, and things were just a little bit more difficult there than here. It's not as politically stable, obviously. And
yes.
They were starting to ask questions about my visa. And, every 3 months I would have to explain why I'm here, etc. And each time it would get harder and harder. And I had friends in a lab in Queensland, the Station Ecology and Acoustics Lab. And they said that they were looking for someone to do a PhD on bottlenose dolphins. And it came at the right time for me. I hadn't really considered moving to Australia at the time, but I was, I wanted to do my PhD. I was having a little bit of trouble with funding and visa stuff and things like that in Southern Africa.
Right.
And so I decided to make the move, for my career, really.
And lucky that we are to have you, because you're now, of course, up at Hervey Bay, which is famous for whale sightings. And again, I think something I read that you said is that it's more likely to sight them migrating south than going north. Is that right? I must admit, when we sailed in there last time, there were no whales in sight. But why would you likely see them more so coming back down south again?
Yeah, they don't actually come into Hervey Bay at all in their northern migration. They're on a mission. They're heading up to the Great Barrier Reef. That's their primary breeding and birthing area. So the vast majority of them will head up straight up there. And then it's on their journey south that they decide to come into Hervey Bay. Now, it might be that, Hervey Bay acts almost as a trap, and they come in there, they spend a few days and they move off. But a lot of them choose to come in here because the waters are really, really calm. Of course, the largest sand island, Gari, is sheltering them there. And so there's very little swell and wave action. And so particularly mums and calves will come in for a few days, anything from a few hours to a few days to even a few weeks. And in there, then, they're very safe waters where they can rest and feed the calf, but also socialize. You'll get the odd few, particularly subadult juvenile animals who aren't sexually mature, so they're in no rush to get to the barrier reef. they might come in on their northern migration, but typically the animals really only come on their southern migration. Now, when they come in numbers,
Yes.
estimates of anything from a third to a half of the whole population.
Do they
Go ahead.
mind people going out to look at them, Barry? I must admit, I think you've got to stay a certain distance away, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of rules and regulations. So here in Queensland, you have to remain 100 meters from a whale and 50 meters from a dolphin. And within 300 meters of them, it's called the caution zone.
Yes.
You have to act responsibly, which means you drive your boat less than 6 knots, quite slow, and you don't approach from the front or the back. So yeah, strict guidelines, but we have to be able to enjoy our wildlife. So I would encourage people to go out and see them if they have the capabilities, whether that's on your own little recreational vessel,
yes,
or with one of the tour operators. But as long as everyone's playing by the rules, then it's really important that we're able to, immerse ourselves in this nature. Otherwise, why do we want to save it,
Exactly, and it's a wonderful, wonderful sight to see. But now, tell me, humpbacks are notorious for singing, is that right?
Yeah, so just the males, only the males sing. They've got pretty much one of the most complex sound signals known in the animal kingdom, which is quite unusual for an animal that isn't highly social. So we typically associate complex signals with more intelligent animals, and particularly more animals who have sort of complex social systems. So humans, dolphins, they have quite complex, but we don't expect it under that theory with humpback whales. But humpback whales tend to be just the black sheep of the whales. They just do things differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Are they a social lot? I mean, do they intermingle, or are they groups or cults or what? Or do they just all socialize together?
They are to a certain degree. So within the cetaceans, the whales and dolphins, you've got the odontocetes, which are all your toothed whales, which include your sperm whales, all your dolphins, killer whales, things like that. And then you've got your baleen whales, and these are your humpbacks, your blue whales, your fin whales. Now, the baleen whales are not typically that social. The longest social bond in humpback whales is between mom and calf in the first year of that calf's life. They'll stay together about a year, and that's it. Whereas for example, for bottlenose dolphins, males can form alliances that last an entire lifetime, and they have quite complex interactions. But the whales, they're social to small extents. If there's a feed patch, they may decide to group up, or in the mating areas, they'll form groups there. But they're not long-term associations. However, we have seen in certain places, particularly in the feeding grounds in places like Alaska or in Stellwagen Bank, that animals come back year after year and feed with the same individuals. So they may not hang out with each other for the rest of the year, but during that feeding time, obviously, for whatever reason, maybe they're comfortable feeding with them, they know that it's good opportunity to feed with this other individual, they'll spend some time with them. But like I said, long-term stable associations are not found in the baleen whales, the large whales.
How do they feed? I'm always fascinated. Tell us a bit more about that. Do they just store food, or are they eating every day?
Well, no. So migratory species like the humpback whales are what we call capital breeders. And that means they build up a reserve over a season, where they feed right through the summer months in Antarctica on krill, which is really high energetic food, and they feed in huge amounts, and they build up the storage for them then to undertake their migration around 10,000 kilometers, breed if they're there for breeding, or give birth if they're a female, and then feed their calf, all while they're not feeding. So half that year they're not feeding at all. So they have to make sure that they build up enough reserves down in Antarctica in order to do the whole migration, breeding, and feeding calf if it's a female. So it's pretty impressive, really.
It is, but how is a baby calf fed? I mean, I can't. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine it. Tell me.
Yeah. Well, they're mammals, so just like a baby human. So the female has nipples. They're internal to be
All right.
to make sure the body is hydrodynamic, so there's no drag. But the calf will come down to the mum's belly where the nipples are and stimulate her by nudging her or whatever, and she will then protrude the nipple where the calf then will latch around it and drink the milk. Now the milk isn't liquid like our milk or cow's milk. It's much thicker and much more fatty and more energetic. And the calf has these sort of little shapes around its tongue, papilla, I think they're called, and that helps form the seal, and they grow out of that. But yeah, that they feed very similar to us because they are mammals.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Absolutely. Do they stay long with their mother, and does the mother discipline them, or do they sort of? I think you might have said a year or something like that they hang around, and then are they off, sort of as unruly teenagers?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, give or take. Some of them will hang out a little bit longer, but around the year's time, the calf is big enough to hopefully be able to evade predation from most likely killer whales, and also be big enough to withstand the cold Antarctic conditions. And at that point, the mum is done there. So she's only really got a year in which time to teach the calf everything it needs to know to be a whale. And that, they need to know the migration route. They also need to know how to socialize with other animals. As I said, they're not as highly social as, the great apes or the dolphins and things like this, but they do have to be some bit social. And so what we've seen here in Hervey Bay and further south is as the calf grows older, and presumably more robust and less prone to injury, the mums tend to form social groups with other mums and calves. And we think this is to help them socialize the calf. We humans do it as well.
Yes.
When our newborn baby is tiny, we don't socialize them because, they could be injured quite easily. But once they're a little bit robust, we send them off to school and they have interactions with other kids, and that's really important for our social development. And the same is very likely for whales on their migration. And because they only have the first year with them, they've got to do it while they migrate. So they take the chances when they occur. And in places like Hervey Bay, you can see that. We see these, what we call multi-mom calf groups, and we've had up to 6 mom calves together, and it's quite a spectacle.
It would be. I mean, is there now a lot more to learn about whales and dolphins and porpoises? And if so, how would you sort of go about that? Or do you think we know pretty much everything about them?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Complete opposite. The more we learn, the more, every day someone will tell me something new that a dolphin or a whale has done, and nothing surprises me anymore because they're so complex. We really know very little. I mean, we know quite a bit. I'll rephrase. Yeah, we know a bit, but we don't know it all.
No.
And even lately, with the addition to sort of drones to our research kit, we started to see behaviors that we never saw before,
Well, yes, you've got an eye in the sky, haven't you, that can keep an eye on them. Now, look, Barry, sadly, we are running out of time because I could talk about whales and dolphins and porpoises for a long time. But we might have to get you back again. So what did you think of that, Paul?
Very interesting. I've been on a whale watching boat a number of times and didn't learn some of the things I've learnt today about whales. So, yes, I'm very impressed.
It's fascinating.
You'll have to come out with Pacific Whale Foundation in Hervey Bay.
I would love to. I would love to if I get there.
That would be fun.
We have a whale watch as well, which generates funds for our research. So it's great.
Oh, cool. I'll look it up next time I'm up there.
Oh, terrific.
Oh, yeah.
So now, look, thank you, Barry McGovern from the Pacific Whale Foundation, for being my guest today. It's been wonderful. And like Paul, I mean, there's so much that I have learnt in the research for this chat, but also talking to you today. And thank you very, very much again for being my guest. And this program has been recorded in the studios of 4RBH Reading Radio in Brisbane for syndication around Australia. And thank you, Paul, for being our producer. And thank you, Barry.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.